Hi, I'm Maggie. Welcome to Experiments in Crafting. Just trying to see if the audio is back up and running here and seeing if we're good to go. Seems like the audio problems might be fixed. Okay, I think we're good. Thank you guys for letting me know. That helps us know what's going on. But anyway, so what I started to say was that I have a box here from Joann fabric. I feel like maybe I'm a little bit spoiled by Amazon Prime because I get the packages so quickly that I feel like Joann fabric ships very slowly, but it's here and it made it in time for the stream, and so we're going to unbox it. It's all brand new yarns from Lion Brand. And so I'm going to open this guy up. Handful of people have said hello tonight. Welcome to everybody who's in the stream, whether you're chatting or not. A couple people were mentioning just staying cool and just trying to keep out of the heat right now. I don't know about the rest of you. I posted a picture from earlier this week. I've been making jam all week. We have a rather large black raspberry patch in our backyard of just wild native black raspberries, and so we've been picking those, and every year when those come into season, I go ahead and turn those into jam, and so I haven't been crocheting much this week, and so not much in the way of videos and stuff have come out, but I'm glad to see you guys again for the live stream. So there's a handful of you watching and chatting, and so I'm going to go ahead and get to the unboxing. All right. So I haven't even opened this up yet. I'm going to slice this guy open. Okay, let's see what we got here. I honestly ordered this about a week and a half ago, and so I don't even remember what I ordered. So let's find out what we've got here. All right, I'm just going to get started. I'm going to pull them all out of here, and then we'll go through each one, and if you guys have questions about any of them, I can answer whatever questions you might have. Get all these guys unboxed out of here. I'll just slide this off to the side. We'll talk about the few that I've unwrapped here, and we'll keep pulling them out as I go. All right, so we'll start with this guy here. This is Lion Brand's Side Dish. Side Dish is 100% cotton yarn. 100% cotton yarn. It is a number 6 super bulky weight. It comes in 3.5 ounce balls, which are 100 grams, 46 yards or 42 meters. They recommend an N or 9 millimeter hook or 9 millimeter knitting needles. And this color is called teal. This is the heaviest weight cotton yarn I have ever seen. It looks like it's 10 or more plies. So it's incredibly heavy yarn. I have some reservations about how this is going to work up into something. I mean, they're calling it side dish, so they're intending for it to be a dishcloth yarn or like a washcloth yarn, but cotton this heavy is going to take forever to dry. So I have some reservations, but I'm willing to work it up and see how it goes. I have it in the color teal, and I think I ordered it in additional colors. get these guys freed up here. This is brand new from Lion Brand. As far as I know, unless somebody says that that's not the case, I'm pretty sure that this was brand spanking new. So I have it in gray and white. So sometimes Lion Brand has really inventive names for their colors, and that is not the case for side dish. Just regular old color names. So that's this first yarn here. I'm going to slide these guys off to the side, and if you have any questions about these, please let me know. It looks like a really, really splitty yarn just from a first pass here. Somebody commenting that they've never seen cotton this thick. I agree. You can see here, this is the end of the yarn. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's a 12-ply yarn. Yeah, it's very rope-like. And like I said, it's gonna be crazy splitty, I think. Like there's no problem just splitting right through the plies. But it could make for some interesting projects, and I have to give Lion Brand some credit here. They are coming out with the craziest group of yarns right now. They're using all different fiber types. They're using all different yarn weights. And that was really, I know this is the second week in a row that we've been talking about Lion Brand yarn, but they've got so much coming out in so many different places that I kind of just had to do them back to back because that's just what I came across. Nobody else is releasing yarn at this rate. And certainly not with the amount of different fibers and different weights that they're mixing around. Yeah, I've never seen a cotton come out as like a rope size, but if you wanted 100% cotton blanket and you wanted to make it fast, you probably could get it out of this. But yeah, Terry suggested a beach bag. I think a beach bag would be perfect use for this. Like I said, I don't think I would want to make washcloths out of this. I don't think they're going to dry ever. Like they'll stay wet, and I think they'll get moldy or mildewy before they'll get dry. I could be wrong about that, but cotton just doesn't dry all that fast. But something like a beach bag would be perfect out of this. Something you could make a little bit more open and get some air through, I think would be perfect. They show on here a recommendation of 2 balls makes a hat. I don't see why you would make a hat out of this. It would be a very strange choice. It's a very heavy yarn. You would kind of lose the reason to use cotton, which is its breathability, just by additional weight. But I don't know. The other thing that I should note is that this is a really pretty teal for this being 100% cotton. I've said several times on streams and in videos that I don't usually care for cotton because cotton usually comes in blah colors. I've got some like Lion Brand re-up, and they just come in kind of colors. Like they're just not all that interesting. But this teal is actually pretty intense. And so I'm impressed by the amount of color I'm seeing here. My husband's asking if I think it's mercerized. I don't think so. Just based on feel. It doesn't have much gloss to it. So I think it's probably unmercerized. Mercerized yarn tends to show color a lot better than, or hold on to color a lot better than regular cotton yarns. But yeah, I think that this is just 100% cotton, unmercerized. Generally it says if it's mercerized, but yeah, they really got the color to show really well on that. So I'm going to slide these guys off to the side and move on to the next one. I'm going to... What's that? Okay. I'm going to free some of these other ones and get this box off the table here. All right, what do we got here? This is Lion Brand Summer Nights. Apparently I got a bonus bundle, which I didn't know I was getting. Not sure what makes it a bonus, except that I think it's heavier. It might be a double ball size. So I picked this Summer Nights up last week at Walmart. They had this in stock. Summer Nights is a #1 superfine yarn. It's 82% acrylic, 18% polyester. This is a 7-ounce, 200-gram ball, which is 875 yards or 800 meters. And they recommend a 3.5 millimeter crochet hook or 3.25 millimeter knitting needles. So, looks like I did get a double ball. I guess that's what the bonus bundle is about, because it is twice as big as the Summer Nights that I picked up from Walmart. The labels also have slightly different looks to them. This lady is on here and has a shawl. It also recommends 2 balls for a shawl. This one recommends 1 ball because it's double the size. But the fonts are slightly different. This is also in French, it looks like. But this is the only ball that I got from Joann Fabric, so I don't know if they're shipping all 200-gram balls, but I don't feel like this was appreciably more expensive than this one, so it might actually be a true bonus. So, might be a reason to look for this at Joann Fabric instead of Walmart. This one here was called Castaway, and it's a mix of blues with a silver thread wrapped around it. This one is called Stargazing, and it is blue, aqua, kind of a seafoamy green, and sort of this pinkish melony color, and it is wrapped in a gold thread. So a little bit different from ball to ball here in a number of different ways. So I'm actually surprised how much I like the Summer Nights yarn. It feels like a very fine cotton. I don't think it feels very much like acrylic at all. So it's an acrylic polyester blend, but I think it feels very much like cotton. It has a very, very nice soft feel to it. The glittery strand, the sparkly metal looking strand, does not feel weird against the hand. It doesn't itch or scratch. Somebody asked that last week. And I don't really feel it as I'm rubbing my hands over the yarn. So I think it would probably make a very nice shawl or wrap for the summer. And I really liked this colorway online, and I like it even more in person. So I think this will make a very nice variegated wrap. So I'm going to slide these guys off to the side. And a couple of people just mentioning that they like the Summer Nights and the Stargazing colorway. But yeah, I think it's a really pretty yarn. So I'm going to slide that guy off to the side. What do I want to go with next here? We'll try these guys. This is Lion Brand Ribbonaire. It's a extremely strange yarn. Let's go with its stats first. It's 55% nylon, 45% polyester. It's a 100-gram ball with 196 yards or 180 meters. It's a number 5 bulky weight yarn. They recommend a 10 or 6 millimeter, a size 10 or 6 millimeter knitting needle, or a 6.5 millimeter K hook. So this is a pretty strange, flat, ribbon-like yarn. I'm not 100% sure what exactly you want to do with this, but I bought it just to see what it looked like. It looks as weird in person as it did online. But I'm going to try and untangle the center here so you guys can see what this looks like. It's pretty strange. It's got like a flat ribbony section that's sort of satin feeling. And then this side here, which is more matte, is like a very, very fine filled tube. It's pretty strange feeling in the hand. The side that's darker and not shiny is very soft, and the other side is a little bit scratchy and a little bit, it's like an eyelash yarn that they like glued all the eyelashes in a row. It's pretty weird. I don't know how well you can see this on screen, but yeah, it's a pretty strange yarn. So I've got 2 balls of this. I personally don't think I would like it up against my skin. Might be okay for a hat where most of it's not touching against your skin. I think it would probably be better for some sort of accessory. What's that? Yeah, like a household decoration or a bag or something. It might be really interesting trim on an otherwise kind of boring blanket. So if you made a single color, very plain stitch blanket, it might make a really interesting, intricate border.
It's like piping or something.
Yeah, it's my husband's saying it looks like piping for sewing. So when you sew around the edge of a project, sometimes you sew on piping, and it looks very much like that. So I think that's why I was thinking like a border. It might look interesting on the edge of a pillow or something that you'd want piped. So, yeah, so somebody recommended placemats and project bags. I think that would probably be fine. It is kind of weird. Somebody said a couch throw. Maybe somebody suggested getting it in a different color. Honestly, the color choices in this yarn are pretty weird. They had a very emerald looking green. There was kind of like a satin pink. They were really bizarre choices. I had a hard time picking this. I really wanted to see what it looked like and how it felt. It's also catching any like dry skin on my fingers. Sometimes when you use like microfiber cloths, you get like where they'll like catch against your fingers, that they're catching pretty bad on my fingers. So it's not, like I said, it's not at all something that I would want up against my skin, because it does catch every little imperfection. I'd also be leery that this edge that's like the satiny part would fray pretty readily. It looks like if you caught it, it would just pop and then like come apart like eyelashes. So, yeah, somebody asked if I could work up a few chains. Yeah, I can work this in, what did they recommend? K-hook, which is a 6.5 millimeter. What do I have out? I've got a 6 millimeter. Let me see if I've got a K-hook handy. While I'm looking for a hook, we're going to readjust one of the cameras so you can see a little bit clearer. There's my K-hook. Okay. Oh, and it's blue to match the yarn. Somebody recommended a pet bed. I almost feel like if you made a cat bed or something out of this, that they would want to just rip it apart because it's such a strange texture. It makes a very weird knot and is kind of stretchy. I can try just readjusting one of the cameras so that I can crochet a couple of chains for you. Ooh, it looks very weird crocheted up, so I'll turn it so you can see a little bit better here. But it sort of rolls up, and mostly what you end up seeing are the matte sections. So that's what it looks like crocheted up. Let me see if I can get this out of the way so you can see this a little bit better. But all of the shiny sections kind of roll in, and they sort of flicker in the light, but I don't know, they roll up. The matte sections look very nylon, like, and I don't mean like nylon pants, but they look like pantyhose. They have, I don't know, something about them just looks like tights or pantyhose. It actually reminds me a lot of like Hue HUE makes colored tights, and they look very much and feel very much like that. It's not as stretchy as you'd think. I think the dark section is stretchy-ish. This section is not very stretchy, but on the edge there's a very, very thin, like rigid part. So when you pull, they don't stretch or flex as much. So it's a pretty bizarre yarn. You might be able to see a little bit better on this zoomed in look here too, but it's pretty strange. Somebody said they're gonna wait till it's on clearance. Yeah, I don't think I blame you. Yeah, it's weird, but it was worth getting and taking a look at, and hopefully that means now you've seen it and maybe you don't need to order it for yourself. Or maybe you think it's awesome and you're going to try it out for some sort of project. I think part of Lion Brand releasing yarn after yarn after yarn is not all of them are going to be winners. Every so often they're going to release something that's just totally off the wall and crazy. I feel a little bit like that. They released a yarn called Stitchbird last year, and it was like a fluffy yarn in bird netting. It was like crisscrossed all around through the yarn. It was very bizarre yarn, and I don't know what it was for or who the target market was on that. But I didn't see anything. I worked it up a little bit, and I didn't see anything that I loved about it. But they make a lot of interesting, very cool yarns. So, gonna move on. Well, we'll go right into the next tape yarn. So this is a tape yarn, which is like a flat yarn rather than something round. This is Lion Brand Rewind. Rewind is, let's see if I got some stats here. It is 70% polyester, 30% viscose. Viscose is a cellulose-based fiber. So what they do is they completely dissolve the cellulose down and then extrude it into a fiber. Depending on where it comes from, I think viscose comes from a specific tree. And so all of the cellulose has to come from that one particular tree. If I'm not mistaken, rayon is a very similar process. Modal is a very similar process. But they're all basically dissolved cellulose extruded back into yarn. But anyway, these are 3.5 ounce balls, which is 100 grams. They're 242 yards or 221 meters. They're selling this as a number 5 bulky weight yarn. They recommend a 6.5 millimeter knitting needle or a 6.5 millimeter crochet hook. And so each of these yarns is, let's see, I've got Current Situation and All of You. These are more in line with Lion Brand's bizarre naming schemes. I think sometimes they're pretty funny. They'll do like weird themes. So, but yeah. So Current Situation and All of You, which is All of You. But if I can get the center out of this ball, somebody was asking what the best projects for tape yarn. So generally when tape yarn is worked up, it doesn't look a whole lot different than regular yarn. The Ribbonaire is kind of the exception to that. It looks pretty weird. This is a very bizarre yarn. I'm hoping you can see this on the camera, but it's actually like a sheet of felt. So there's not actually any yarn to this. Like when I was doing when I showed you guys the dishcloth yarn, where's the white one? So with the dishcloth yarn, you can see at the end that it's a bunch of plies of yarn all next to each other and then twisted all together. This is not like that at all. This looks very much like a sheet of felt. And so if I pull this apart, there are no plies and there's no actual yarn here. So the good news is it's absolutely not going to be splitty, because you can't split something that doesn't have plies. But yeah, this is really, really strange stuff. It's very, very soft, but it's one of the weirdest things I think I've ever encountered as far as yarn goes, which is saying something because we just had this. So it is sticking a little bit to my skin. My fingers are pretty banged up from raspberry picking, so I won't hold it against anything tonight, but I'm going to go ahead and crochet up a couple of stitches for you. This is, like I said, this is pretty bizarre stuff. Pull this out of here, and I'm going to crochet up a couple stitches for you. Would I starch it? So I don't generally starch anything. What I generally do is a process called blocking, where you wet everything. You can use a little soap, or you can use like some conditioner, or even just a little bit of vinegar. But you soak it, and then you lay it out to dry, and you pin it in the shape you want. If you're doing something like ornaments or something where you want it to stay rigid, you can soak in starch, or you can soak in, actually, some people use water and like Elmer's school glue, and they'll soak it, and then when they lay it out, they block it and they dry it, and then it'll stay in a rigid shape. So the only time you really want to starch anything is if you don't want it to flex or bend. You could use a little bit of starch if you had something rolling over, but generally blocking will fix most of that problem. All right, so I've worked up some chains here, and this stuff doesn't want to play very nicely. It curls up on itself. I think that this would make a really interesting, like, open sweater, and actually that's what they show on the model, is they've got a really open, like, I don't know, knit sweater here that kind of lays interesting over like a tank top. But the stuff is pretty soft, and I think would end up being relatively lightweight because it doesn't sort of take up the space. It stays where you put it. But like I said, this is just basically a very thin sheet of felt. If you just went to the store and started cutting felt into fabric, you wouldn't get something that was terribly different than this. I have to imagine it has limited applications. Besides like an open sweater or sort of an open bag, you're not going to get a very tight knit on this. I can actually feel the stitches really, like, you can feel every little knot, so I don't think I would want this as fingerless gloves or anything that's going to be worn tight to the skin, just because you can feel every little bump. Those must slip past each other a little bit better on regular yarn. Somebody's asking maybe a bobble stitch on this. That might work. Bobble stitches, it's hard to say, because it could either give really good definition to a bobble stitch, and so they would be really, bobbles similar to a puff stitch, but, so it could give a really good definition, but they might just fall a little bit flat because this yarn doesn't have any puff to it. So those yarns sort of rely on fluffier yarns sort of taking up the space. So I don't know how that would work. I could try and do one here real quick and just do like a 5 stitch here. So let's see what we got here. See if I remember what I'm doing. Do kind of a puff here. Got kind of a knot growing on my yarn. All right, if we make that a puff stitch. So it looks all right, but like I said, it doesn't really want to puff much. Sometimes they rely on additional ones sitting next to them. But yeah, my suspicion was that it wasn't going to puff. It's really difficult to work chains into. Everything just kind of stretches out and doesn't go back to, what do I want to say here? It doesn't have much spring back. So if you pull it, it just stays where you put it. We were talking about starch a minute ago. It almost acts like it was starched. It doesn't want to bounce back at all. So you can see there's a couple of sort of puff stitches work next to each other, and they just don't really want to puff. They're just kind of lumps. This yarn just doesn't have much loft to it. Well, it doesn't have any loft to it. But yeah, so it's very, very easy to frog. You can rip your stitches out without any problem. It has basically no hair. So that's usually the problem when you have yarn with a lot of halo or hair sticking off of the strand. Usually have trouble pulling the yarn out. This has no hair to speak of, and it pulls out really easily. So yeah. So again, this is Rewind tape yarn. So set these guys aside. If you've got any questions about anything that's on the table that we've already talked about, go ahead and put those in the live chat. I'll keep watching comments section and try and answer those. If you've just joined us, these are all yarns that we're unboxing from Joann Fabric. They're all brand new from Lion Brand. We've opened Side Dish, Summer Nights, Rewind, and Ribbonaire. And now we're going to take a look at Beautiful You. Beautiful You is... I wasn't sure what to expect here, but I thought that it might be very similar to the ZZ Twist yarn, and I think that I'm right. I'm a little bit concerned by the fact that I'm seeing tails sticking out of my yarn. I've got one sticking out here. I've got one sticking out here. I've got one sticking out here. I'm not sure what's going on. It looks not... Well, I'm trying to tell if they just put so much twist in this yarn that it's trying to twist back on itself, which is a thing that happens. Sometimes if you take yarn and you twist, it'll sort of collapse in on itself, and the twists will try and like deal with all of that torque. But I'm not thrilled with what I'm seeing so far. The ZZ Twist did not have this problem. This looks very much like ZZ Twist. It's very shiny and has a what you call a really high twist. So high twist means that you really see those twists. There's not much squish. They look like a really hard twist. So again, this is Beautiful You. Let's see, we've got their 3.5 ounce balls, which is 100 grams, 326 yards or 298 meters. They're a number 2 fine weight yarn. They recommend a 3.5 millimeter knitting needle or a 3.75 F hook. And this is 100% acrylic. I have it in pumice stone, aquatic, and capri. Capri is a really, really beautiful teal. I don't know how well that's showing up, but it's a really bold, beautiful teal. So I kind of thought this palette might make a nice project. I probably have some ZZ Twist around somewhere, but I can see if I can dig it up. It's not going to be over there. It's going to be over in a bin. But this looks very similar in my opinion. I think the ZZ Twist was slightly heavier yarn. So I can look that up in a minute and see what weight class that was in. This looks just a little bit finer. They're calling it number 2 fine, which is a sport weight yarn. My husband says the ZZ Twist was a number 4 medium yarn. And this yarn definitely does have an S twist. So for those of you not familiar, yarns can be spun with a left hand or a right hand twist. They're generally spun with an S twist. However, when we talk about yarns being splitty for crochet, generally what that means is that your hook splits the plies. So you've got a bunch of plies, and when you make your stitch, you only grab one of them and pull the yarn through it, or 2 or 3, but not all of them. And so the part of the reason for that is that when crocheters turn their yarn, they tend to turn it the opposite direction that knitters do, and that loosens the plies, and so it makes it easier for your hook to get through the center. So if you take this yarn and you twist it this way a little bit, you loosen the plies. Yeah, I can show you with the big cotton here. So this yarn, if I turn this, there's not much twist to it, and so when I turn it, the plies sort of come apart. And so if I was working with this, it would be very easy to pull and just pull through some of my loops. This isn't really like the worst problem in the world, except that it leaves kind of these like ugly little, let me show you here. If I only pull through some of these, you end up like with these ugly little side loops that don't have any structure anymore. So you get like little bits and pieces that don't lay right with your project, and there really isn't anything you can do to fix them except to basically sew them down later on. So the idea behind Z-twist yarn is it's twisted the other direction, and you can watch for a further explanation on this if you go to my ZZ Twist yarn video. But basically the idea is that if they Z-twist it, which is the opposite twist when you crochet with it, you will tighten the plies and make it harder to get splitty yarn. And the ZZ Twist worked up beautifully. It had just the most gorgeous stitch definition because it was a really hard twist yarn that just showed stitches beautifully. I have a pair of gloves that I still wear all the time, fingerless gloves, that just look really, really nice in it. And so when I saw this, I thought this looks very similar. And in person, it does look very, very similar, but it is an S-twist yarn. So it's a really tight twist. I don't think you'll have any problem with it being splitty, realistically, because it's got so much twist in it. You would have to really work at unplying it. It also looks like it's only a 2-ply yarn, which makes it that much harder to split plies when there's only 2. But I think this would, they show women wearing sweaters in this, but this would make an absolutely stunning pair of fingerless gloves. Anything that you really want to show off the stitches. These would be great for cables. They would be great for really intricate stitch patterns. Anything where you really want the stitches to do the work and you don't want all the colors and gradients and stripes. Somebody mentioned the other day that they were sick of stripes. These are beautiful solids that I think will work up into really, really pretty projects. Just a really nice big shawl would look gorgeous in one of these solid colors. So, so when I opened this up, I was noticing that there's these weird little bits in this yarn, which I'm not thrilled with. I am not seeing that on the surface anywhere on Capri, and I do not see that on the surface anywhere that I can see real easily on the Aquatic. So it might just be that I got a bad ball of pumice stone. I'll probably rewrap this into a cake and see how many of those defects I've got. General rule of thumb is that 2 to 3 defects per ball is acceptable, and each person kind of has their own limit, but if you get a ball of yarn that has multiple defects, generally you can contact the manufacturer and they'll send you a new one, or they'll tell you to return it and you know, have it replaced. But from basically everything that I understand, that most manufacturers will honor some sort of warranty basically on the yarn if it's got too many defects. But like I said, these are pretty bizarre defects because they're not really knots. I think that this is over twist. Or actually what it looks like happened here, just, it looks like this is all one ply that somehow got twisted off to the side. So it looks like maybe the yarn got some slack in it when it was being twisted. So this is 2 plies here and 2 plies here, but this is 1 ply coming off to the side. That's all from the same strand of yarn. So it's pretty difficult to see here, but if I sort of deconstruct it, I can see that all of this belongs to one of the 2 plies here. So try and back it up on camera here so you can see what I'm talking about. Yeah, we're getting it focused and up. All right, so what you can see here, there's 2 pieces of yarn running along, and then what happens here is this is all, I can see this piece and this piece only attached to the same piece of yarn. So, okay. So this piece of yarn here and this piece of yarn are the same strand, and somehow they got twisted off to the side here. And if I undid this, you could see that they're all one thing. But somehow they created this like side horn over here. And I've got a couple of spots that are like that in this ball. So I don't know if they had a tension problem on their twisting machine or what the problem was here. But this has exactly the same problem over on this side. It's 1 strand off to the side. I don't know if you could like even it out by sort of stretching and seeing if you can re-even that. I'd probably have to get in and rewrap this ball and see what I've got going on here. But yeah, it looks like they definitely had some sort of issue. I also wonder if these, like, they're on opposite sides of the ball, but they could be actually not very far away from each other in the run. Because when you start unwrapping it, they make big loops, and so they could be pretty close to each other. I wonder if there's a knot or a break in here that caused some sort of problem. So it's pretty hard to tell what's going on in this shape, but it's not promising that I've got that many defects right here up on the surface. But it is really, really beautiful yarn with really pretty colors. So I don't know what this is going to be, but I'm pretty excited to work with it because it's really stunning colors. So I've gotten a couple of comments recently, and I mentioned this last week a little bit too, that some people don't seem to be getting notifications that we're live or notifications when I post videos. So one of the things that I can recommend is that if you are a subscriber, that you, next to the subscribe button, there's a little bell. And if you hit that bell, you should be getting notifications. I know that that's not 100% true, that sometimes YouTube just opts not to send people notifications on some things. But if you want the most notifications from the channel, hitting the little bell on the side can be the best. That's the best way I can tell you to make sure that you're getting all of the notifications for the live streams and for any videos that we publish. If you're watching the video and you like what you see, please go ahead and hit like or make comments on any of my videos. All of those things help other people to find the channel and to find my videos, and they get suggested a little bit more. So, yeah. If you don't already follow me on, I have accounts on Facebook and Instagram. I post most of the time right before I'm about to live stream. Sometimes I just post something that I'm working on. It's also a really good way if you have a project that you're working on and you need a little bit of crochet help or yarn advice or something that I can help with. I'm always happy to do that. You can send me a direct message or you can post and tag me in something. Yeah, I also really love to see projects. If it's something that was on my channel, like the corner to corner blanket, and you've worked one of those up, I love to see finished projects. So feel free to share pictures and stuff like that with me too. So both on Facebook and on Instagram, I'm at Experiments in Crafting. You can also find me on Twitter. I just started a new account there. If you search Experiments in Crafting. That one's not at Experiments in Crafting because it's too long of a name for Twitter. But yeah, pretty much anywhere on social media you can find me at Experiments in Crafting. So, yeah, onwards with the yarn. So, oh, somebody's asking about something here. All right. Okay. So Terry asked about the yarn holders over here. The yarn holders are something that my mom picked up for me at a going out of business sale for a yarn store up by her. And I think what we're going to do, I've had so many questions about them that I think we're going to do a tutorial on how to do them. They're basically just a dowel and a stand. So I think that we can put together a project with pretty limited tools and limited like skill in woodworking. We're just going to use off-the-shelf parts and some simple techniques, and we're going to put together a tutorial on how you guys can make your own yarn stands, because they've been a pretty popular attraction, I guess, in my set here. So... but yeah, they're pretty nice just for stacking up cakes of yarn and keeping them from rolling away or falling down. Especially once you work some of the cakes, they start to collapse or sort of get squished and lose their shape. So sometimes they're not all that easy to stack onto shelves. So, but yeah, that's the deal on the yarn holders. Tammy is mentioning that with the new YouTube drop... So with the bell, there's a drop down that you can see a percentage of the... there's a drop down where you can say that you want to see some of them or all of the videos from that channel. Yeah, he was putting a bell on screen, and apparently I can't point to it. It's dancing around. So, anyway, sorry, I'm flipping through here to see what I've missed. I think I'm caught up. Okay. So moving on, I got a couple more yarns to show you, and then we can turn it over to Q&A. If you guys have any questions, crochet or yarn related, go ahead and start throwing those in the live chat, and I will get to those when we get through these last couple yarns here. So this is Faye. Faye is a 3.5 ounce 100-gram ball. It's 360 yards or 330 meters. They are selling it as a #1 superfine yarn, which makes it a fingering weight yarn. It recommends a 3.25 millimeter knitting needle or a 3.5 millimeter crochet hook, which is an E-hook. The very interesting thing about this yarn, it is 100% cotton. I don't think I've ever come across a 100% spun, basically not spun, but plied and twisted yarn. So there are a couple of fingering weight yarns that are 100% cotton that are the plied but not twisted yarns. So something similar to It's a Wrap Sprinkles or It's a Wrap. Actually, original It's a Wrap I think was lace weight 100%. No, It's a Wrap original was 50/50 cotton polyester. So this is 100% cotton. It's a very similar in feel to like floss, like not dental floss, but embroidery floss. This has got a little bit of a knot in it, but I'm going to go here to the light blue section. I'm going to try and push some of these yarns off to the side here. But it has a pretty nice feel to it. It is 100% cotton, so it has basically no give. If you've watched my videos before, you'll know that that's one of the things that I don't love about cotton. The colors on it are pretty good for cotton. I mean, there's some vivid color here. I had a hard time choosing because the colors that were available were relatively pale and not terribly interesting. It came in, I think, orange and like a spring green and a purple, which was all like shades of lilac, and I think a pink. I think it's only available in like 5 colors, and they're all this color changing style gradient yarn. I thought it was really interesting. You don't often see very, very fine cottons. So Lion Brand right now has a number 1 super fine cotton and a number 6 dishcloth cotton, which are the 2 very extreme ends of the spectrum. So you've got basically rope and basically embroidery floss. The difference here is that this stuff is not mercerized. You can tell that by its sort of dull and not very shiny finish. But I think that this could make some really interesting projects. If you wanted 100% cotton, some people are allergic to wool. And so if you wanted to make a shawl out of 100% cotton, but you still want the gradient look that everybody's been after recently, your options are basically 0. So you can do 100% acrylic without too much problem, but doing natural fiber in a gradient, I cannot think of another alternative except for maybe the stranded yarns. So something like It's a Wrap Rainbow or It's a Wrap Sprinkles are stranded yarns. Those are both 50/50 cotton polyester blends, but I do know that there are several people online who do 100% cotton versions of that. Other than that, I don't know of another company who sells 100% cotton gradient yarn, or really even 100% cotton fingering weight yarn. They're pretty few and far between. Like I said, your alternative there is really to use something like crochet thread, which is all mercerized, which may or may not be fine. But if you don't want it to be ultra shiny like a mercerized cotton is, this is an interesting alternative. It actually has a really nice hand. It feels very soft, and I think would make a very nice shawl or scarf. You can do fingerless gloves. I don't really care for cotton for something that needs to hold its structure because it stretches out a bit. Anybody who's ever had to, wear wet cotton jeans that, you got wet outside and they don't return to their structure. They don't stay on because they're wet and they stretch out and then they kind of stay stretched out till you dry them again. So, for the same reason, you might not want to wear something fitted like a fingerless glove out of cotton. But if you're allergic to wool and you don't want to use acrylic or polyester, then cotton might be the way to go. So set this guy aside. Eileen's mentioning it's cool that my husband knows about yarn. He produces all of my videos and has to edit them and listens to me say the same thing over and over and over again. He usually also goes with me to all of the yarn shows and stuff like that. So I guess in an interest of not being totally oblivious in what's going on there, he's picked up some of the lingo and the terms and learned quite a bit about yarn. So, these I've saved for last because they're really cool. They look as bright and vivid in person as they did in the pictures online. This is Lion Brand Tweedledee. So I assume they're playing off the fact that this is kind of a tweedy looking yarn. This is a 5.3 ounce ball, which is 150 grams. They're 310 yards or 285 meters. There's 75% acrylic, 25% cotton. This is a number 3 lightweight yarn. They recommend a 4mm knitting needle or a 5mm H hook. These are really, really intense colors. I chose them all because they reminded me of the colors in my hair when my hair is freshly dyed. I have zinnia, eggplant, and indigo here. Zinnia, eggplant, indigo. They are really soft, squishy yarns. I'm having a hard time telling. They look a little bit like they're thick and thin. And by that, I mean, you can see that there's sections where the cotton is puffy. And then there's sections where I assume that's the cotton portion of the yarn. I could be wrong there. But then there's also sections where it's really finely wound. And wound in really nice and tight. So the different sections there give a tweed-like texture to your finished project. It can be a little bit difficult for a beginner to work with because your gauge changes a little bit when the yarn gets fatter and thinner. So you might have spots that are a little bit more open and a little bit more closed off, just because your stitches will take up more or less space. But really, these are really intense, stunning colors. I really like the way that the white looks. It looks very galaxy to me. So like some sort of space or galaxy type thing. My yarn bowl, which is usually down here, but I don't... Oh, wait, it's on the floor. So I have this yarn bowl here that I painted myself, and so these yarns kind of remind me of it. So it's got some dark blue and some pinks and some purples in here with a whole bunch of white speckles. And so these yarns kind of reminded me of that. And I am not at all disappointed with these. These look really, really cool in person, and they look this cool online. So... What's that? Yeah, they have a really nice squish to them. Sometimes, like, you get a cake yarn and it's squishing, but it doesn't have, like, you don't want to just keep squishing it. These are really, I think the word that you'd want to use here is lofty. They really just have a nice squish to them. And it's not just a loosely wrapped ball. Like, the yarn just has a really nice feel to it. They're really soft and kind of satiny. The polyester, which I assume is the dark colored portion, like I said, these are 75% polyester, 25% cotton, and I assume that the white portion is the cotton and the brightly colored section is the polyester. But the polyester on here looks very similar to this acrylic. I'm sorry, they're not 75% polyester. They're 75% acrylic and 25% cotton. And it looks very similar to this yarn. It's almost like they took like one more ply of this and one ply of cotton and just made this yarn out of the same stuff. But it has the same sort of sheen to it as this yarn does. You can see, like, this one just has a really bright, intense color with just a really nice sheen to it. It's shiny and smooth. And this yarn looks exactly the same if you look at just the polyester, at the acrylic portions, with the cotton sort of mixed in. So I don't think I would recommend this the same way I recommend this one. I don't think this is going to show stitch definition. I think the tweed portions are going to obscure it. Yeah, so I think that the cottony portions are going to obscure the stitches. So this would be better for something where you're not as concerned with seeing, like I wouldn't do cables with this. Because all of the sort of speckles and tweedy look to it is going to sort of wash out all of your stitch detail. But this would be really nice for striped shawls. It would be really nice for like project bags. I think it would be great for just anything that you want sort of a really nice overall look. You could work all in one color, or likely what I'm going to do is stripe with this.
What about that pattern that you got the cloud for?
Yeah, so my husband's pointing out, I have some of this yarn over here from Good For You. This is I think they call it Donegal, or Donegal, which is this like little bits and pieces of fluff mixed into the yarn. I intended this yarn for a blanket called Charlotte's Dream. So it's a really pretty blanket. They do like gray and white and then one color. And then you do 12 squares all in, just changing the color part. So you hold the gray, you hold the white, and you change the color on each square, and you make like a patchwork blanket. I think that this could work for that. What you probably could do is use ZZ Twist in gray and in white, and then use this for one of these for each of the color sections. And I think that could turn out to be an absolutely stunning blanket with these really vivid, bright colors. ZZ Twist should be very, very close in weight. This is a number 3 weight. I think you probably could sub in the ZZ Twist. It was a pretty fine number 4 weight. So I think you'd be okay using that. And then those would be solid colors, and these would be sort of a speckly color to go in there with it. And I think that combination could make a really, really cool blanket. Alternatively, I think this came in a number of different colors. You could just do solid squares and not have to do the Charlotte's Dream where you have to hold a solid color along with it. The Beautiful You is just a little bit too fine to mix in with this, but I think the ZZ Twist is pretty close to this yarn. So, just kind of looking through some comments here. Yeah, so if there's any questions or comments, you want to see more of any of these yarns, or you want to, you came in late to the stream and you want to know some things about what's on the table here, go ahead and throw those in the live chat. If you have questions about crochet projects that you're working on, or videos that I've published, or yarn questions in general, I'm happy to take any of those at this time. Just throw those in the live chat. If you're watching this later on, you can always ask questions in the comment section, and I will get to those as soon as I can. But yeah. All right. Somebody did mention, we were talking a little bit about the yarn holders on the side, and Eileen mentioned that she uses a paper towel holder. That would also work. Basically all my yarn holders is a plate, like a wooden plate, and then a dowel rod up the center. And so anything that just holds your yarn upright. Like I said, after you stack so many cakes, the imperfections in them sort of build, and you end up with like a Leaning Tower of Pisa type of effect. And so you can really only stack so many before a little bit of motion gets them toppled over. So if you just run a stick through the center, they can't fall. So if you have shelving and you have lots of yarn, putting them all on sticks and then putting them on the shelves would prevent them. It also makes it easier to move piles out of the way because you can just grab the whole dowel rod. But yeah, so like I said, I picked those up. They were part of a store display for a local yarn store that went out of business near my mom. And right after I started crocheting, we came across this and bought a whole bunch of really nice stuff that I still haven't even worked through all of that. As you can probably guess, I buy yarn much faster than I can use yarn. But a lot of that is to show things off to you guys so that you can see stuff before you have to make the decision to buy something. A lot of the Lion brand yarns will come out and they'll release 10 yarns all at the same time, and most Joann fabric stores will get one of them. And so you are sort of forced into a corner where you either have to travel a really long way to find the single Joann fabric in the region that might have all 10 of them, or you have to buy sight unseen. And so hopefully seeing them on my videos and hearing a little bit about what I think about them, you can make better informed decisions before you have to buy something. So just a lot of nice comments that basically saying that they appreciate the yarn reviews, and not being able to get out. You have to buy, if you're going to buy yarn, a lot of times you have to buy it sight unseen and buy it online so that it comes to you. And so if somebody can touch and feel and squish it and tell you what they think before you have to order it and then have to deal with returning it and all that stuff. So hopefully that helps you guys out. Have I reviewed the Lion brand hand dyed? Honestly, I thought I grabbed a skein of that and put it in my shopping cart online, and apparently I did not because it's not here. I have not reviewed it. I haven't seen it. It's a new yarn, but the Joann fabric near my sister's house tends to get everything in. And so I'm sure in the next couple weeks we'll be up there at some point, and maybe I can grab a skein from them and get a review done on that. I'm curious to see what it's like because Lion brand has surprised me in some cases and really put out a very nice product, and then other times you get something and you're like, I don't know what they were going for here. Something... The shawl and a ball, or shawl and a cake, both yarns are surprisingly nice, and soft and really well done gradients. And then you get something like this mess of Ribbonaire, and you're like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with this or where I was supposed to go with this. So I don't know which of those cases will the hand-dyed yarn will fall into. But they do generally put out a very nice product. This is a really nice yarn. This one is very nice. I'm not sure what's up with this particular skein with the little side loops, but they do tend to put out a pretty nice nice yarn. Somebody asked what yarn I use most often. As far as a type of yarn, I generally use 100-gram balls of fingering weight yarn, usually 100% wool or mostly wool and a little bit of nylon, potentially a little bit of cashmere. Those are my most common yarns used for, I really like making 100-gram shawls. So basically just a scarf that takes 100 grams of hand-dyed yarn. That's generally what I buy the most of if I'm at a yarn show or So yeah, I think that's typically what. You think of the Twisted Fiber Arts?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Twisted Fiber Arts is a particular brand that I buy. I guess I shouldn't say often. It's a really high end luxury gradient hand dyed yarn. I've bought a couple of skeins of it. I don't have a shawl around handy. Probably somewhere upstairs, but it's a really beautiful gradient dyed yarn. The one that I always buy from them has stellina in it, which is the short fibers of sparkle, rather than something like Summer Nights, where it's twisted around the yarn. The stellina gets blended into the yarn, so when it's spun, it you can't really feel it, and it sparkles from all different angles, and it doesn't bunch up or anything like that. But I don't know that I have a brand that I use most often. As far as yarn store, like Joann Fabric, Michaels, Hobby Lobby yarns that I use most often, I tend to buy white yarn from. This is a shawl from a Twisted Fiber Arts yarn. I'll slide some of these guys out of the way here. Try not to lose my wine. Oop, I think we lost a skein of the dishy yarn, or whatever it's called, side dish. So this is the Twisted Fiber Arts worked up into a shawl. Hopefully you can see like the sparkle and the really smooth gradient. This yarn has cashmere in it. I think it's 10% cashmere, mostly wool, and a couple of percent of stellina. But yeah, this is typically the yarn, if left to my own devices, I buy fingering weight yarn I think this came in like a 140 gram ball, but actually this might have only been a 100 gram ball. But yeah, so 100 gram shawls, and I just throw them on, wear them like this. The audio might be muffled with this over my lav mic, but yeah, so that's what I buy the most of. Like I was saying, as far as big box brands from stores like Joann or Michaels, the Premier Deborah Norville yarn, I think it's Premier Every Day. If I'm making baby blankets, I tend to buy that in white. That's just the one that worked out the best for me in the past. I don't know. Yeah. So somebody's asking if this is a 100 gram shawl. This is what I mean by a 100 gram shawl. Like I said, I can't remember if this is slightly over 100 grams from Twisted Fiber Arts. But yeah, this type of shawl, let's see. I'm going to stand up for 1 second and grab one off my shelf over here. I think I've got two here. Ooh, I caught a button. Sorry about that. Okay. So this is a 100 gram or roughly 100 gram shawl. This one I'm positive is 100 grams. This one came in kind of a Easter egg types of colors. But this is another 100 gram shawl, just different pattern. I tend to like real open lacy ones because you get a bigger shawl out of the same amount of yarn. So again, just twisted and wrapped is generally how I wear these. And I like to wear shawls all year round. Doesn't really bother me if it's, 100 degrees out or not. I don't mind. I like the way they look on. So that one, and this one is an interesting shape. It doesn't wear as well as the others because it doesn't have the point, and so when I wrap it, it sits really flat, but it's like I don't know, half a hexagon. So, yeah, all of these are 100-gram balls worked into shawls. So, just various options here. One of the things, if you go to Ravelry, you can search by weight of yarn and then by yardage. I have a couple of Ravelry tutorials where you can go through and I show you how to do the most effective search by using basically no words and using all of their sort features on the side. But yeah, so you can go through, and so if you want to make a 100-gram shawl, you can go through and you can search for shawls and use that modifier, and then you can choose fingering weight yarn, and then you can choose, say, like 400 to 450 yards, which should get you in the ballpark of 100 grams, and then you see all of the resulting options, and so then you can go through and pick something that interests you in that size range. So if you just want to splurge and get yourself a ball of hand-dyed yarn, you can go ahead and do that and choose a pattern that you know will work with something like that. So,
Somebody wanted to pattern the blue shawl.
pattern on the blue shawl is from Rachie Newen Designs. I'm pretty sure it was called Black Comb when I was testing it. I don't know if that's what it released as. Is that the my husband's gonna throw the link in the comment section. This one wears really nice over your shoulders because the hexagon shape sort of forces it to stay, and it's not constantly falling off of your, like, I have really broad shoulders but round shoulders, and so nothing wants to stay on them, that just slips off. And so I really like when I can find a shawl and it sits and stays and I can move around and it's not falling off. So this hexagon shape stays really well that direction. The only problem that I've had with this is that this shade of blue matches nothing I own. And so I've had trouble finding, when I go to wear it with something, it doesn't seem to match anything. And it's just because I chose a really bizarre shade of blue. But yeah, the shawl works up really nice. I've recommended her patterns several times before on here. They're very well written. I know some of them she's been adding charts to, but for the most part, they're just very well written, very well tested patterns. I used to test for her, and the only reason I don't continue to test for her is just time in my schedule. She runs on pretty tight deadlines, so just haven't had time to test for her. But I really like this one's got like these nice like backbones through the side. You can see coming off of the edge here, it's really open in the center, but then out the side, you've got this sort of spine here, and then it's got one mirrored over here, and so it just makes it really divide up the pattern. So, I don't remember. It came in a yarn box. Somebody was asking what yarn it was. I might be able to dig through pictures in my OneDrive or whatever it's called, and see if I can find a picture of the yarn when it came in. But this is a couple years old, I think, at this point. And I honestly don't remember what the name of the color was. Like I said, it came in, there used to be a subscription service called Yarnbox, and I know that it came as part of that. And I don't remember because I didn't buy it specifically. Like, it was, they basically came as mystery boxes. So, I don't remember. I feel like it had something to do with narwhal, but I don't remember if that was the color or the yarn dyer. But based on feel, it's at least, 75% merino. Generally, they don't go too much over 25% nylon, if there's nylon in them at all. So.
Somebody wants to know, why do you like Ribbonaire for baby blankets? How is it different from others? I would repeat the question.
All right, so somebody asked why I like Premier over other brands of yarn and how it's different. So specifically, I mentioned that I use it for baby blankets. There's a couple of different reasons. One, the Premier Everyday is a really nice, soft number 4 weight. And that part is important because a lot of times when I'm making a baby blanket, it's I should have made it 3 weeks ago, and really I have like 18 hours to get a baby blanket done before a baby shower, because I just short myself a lot on deadlines. And so a number 4 weight works up a bit faster than a DK or lightweight number 3 yarn. If you go into Joann Fabric or Michael's or wherever you shop for yarn and you find the baby yarn section, the vast majority of those yarns are going to be number 3 weight yarns. They work up into like sweaters a lot better because they're a little bit finer and they can flex a little bit more when you make small stitches. But for a baby blanket, they don't need to be that small. So I will speed up a little bit by going to a number 4 weight yarn, which is how I came across the Deborah Norville Premier Everyday yarn. The second reason is because I hate yarns that shed. And when you work with something like Karen's Simply Soft, it sheds terrible. But realistically, it's actually kind of hard to find a really nice, soft number 4 weight yarn in solid white. And the solid white portion is important to me because that's what my grandma made blankets in. And part of the reason that I continue to make baby blankets is for family members that I know my grandma would have wanted to make a blanket for. And since she's passed away, I've sort of taken that on. And she always used to make beautiful white blankets with sort of an Irish look to them. And finding yarn in solid white that has a little bit of a sheen to it. Red Heart Super Saver, Karen 1 pound. Some of the yarns that come in bigger sizes intended for baby blankets or blankets just are kind of dull, in my opinion. Like they don't have the same shine to them that baby yarns do. And so I guess that's really how I ended up with the Premier Everyday yarns. They have the same shine to them that baby yarns tend to have. They have a little bit more sheen to them. It doesn't shed horrifically. It was available in a number 4 weight, and it was available in white. So I don't know if those are particularly relevant to everybody, but I like that they also came in just every color under the sun. I think I grabbed some recently in like the most obnoxious neon purple I pretty much have ever seen on yarn. So I've got a couple skeins of that floating around here somewhere. I don't know if I've got any Premier Everyday. Sometimes there's a skein or 2 floating around. I think they're down there, but no, they're over here. I just trying to see if I've got some handy. Yeah. So this is a Premier Everyday plaid that he pulled out just to show here. But you can see they've got a little bit of a sheen to them rather than being flat like a... this is sort of a bad example, but some acrylics have like no shine to them. They're just kind of a dull or sort of a matte finish, where this has got a little bit of shininess to it and looks a little bit silkier, which is generally what I want for my baby blankets. So the alternative to that, though, is something... I'm dropping yarn like crazy here. This is not Simply Soft, but it's very similar to it. It also is shiny, but you can just pick the fibers off of here. It just sheds terrible and pills terrible. The Premier Everyday is not like that. It does still look like it might be, but the fibers don't pull out real easily. So, I don't know. It's just something that actually, this is, that's Red Heart with Wool. The Red Heart with Wool actually was a really nice yarn. They just don't make it anymore as far as I've found. That one actually worked up really nice. It had a really nice shine to it. And I used it for several baby blankets and then couldn't buy it anymore.
So everybody wants to know about the bowl, where it came from.
All right. So I guess we're getting some questions about this bowl. This was a present from my sister. It came from Amazon as an unpainted bowl. If you search ceramic yarn bowl on Amazon, it's usually like the first search result. My husband will probably grab the link for you guys and throw it in there. But it was really a cool project. I went to Michael's and bought a whole bunch of acrylic paints and just started dabbing paint on and sort of blending it. And then I got a couple that were metallic. I got a couple that were shiny. Yeah, that's it. He's gonna put the link to the bear bowl. So, like I said, it came unpainted. I painted it. So some of them were high gloss paints. I mixed a whole bunch of different ones. I know that this teal was a metallic version, but I mixed a whole bunch of colors and just kind of started sponge painting it on and dabbing it and rubbing it until I got the kind of the right blend of sort of a spacey galaxy look. Then I took white paint and sort of flicked it, like just flicked it at here and tried to splatter in some stars and give it sort of a night sky look. The thing that really put it over the top, though, was that I used an ultra fine black glitter and sprinkled it all over. And I think you probably can see some of the sections on the bottom here where it's got black glitter mixed in. And the glitter is not very glittery looking, but it gives it some depth that it just wouldn't have had otherwise. We're zooming in a little bit here so you can see here in this section there's a bunch of black glitter. I probably put it on that side first. So I let it sit like this. I painted the whole outside, and then once it was dry, I flipped it back around. I painted the whole inside. Once that part was dry, I took the whole thing outside and I used clear acrylic spray paint. And I sat it like this and I spray painted like 3 coats on top to try and cover up the glitter. I really hate the feeling of anything similar to sandpaper. And this really fine glitter had kind of a sandpapery feel to it. And I also didn't want glitter all over my stuff, so I didn't want it to flake off over time. So just some clear acrylic spray paint went over the top of the entire thing, both inside and out. And so yeah, that's the whole process on that bowl. It was a lot of fun. I am not much of a painter, but I had fun just sort of blending and wiping, and I figured worst case scenario, if everything went bad and it looked terrible, I could just paint it a solid color. So yeah, that's my yarn bowl. It is really nice because it's really heavy ceramic, and so if you throw a ball of yarn in here, you can pull pretty hard and it'll pull back against you. It's got the holes drilled here that you can run your yarn through, but then you can't take your project out, or you've got the like big looping one to sort of guide your yarn out of here. But yeah, so this yarn bowl you can pick up on Amazon. It's, I think it was in the $25-ish range. And was a pretty good project. I have a friend who paints a lot with her kids. She'll buy like the ceramic little sculptures from Michael's. They usually have them at like different holidays. And so if you want to do those with your kids or your grandkids or your nieces and nephews, and you want to do something that you're actually going to use for yourself, you could grab a yarn bowl for yourself and some of the $3 or $5 sculptures from Michael's and a whole bunch of paint, and do all of them at the same time. So they seem to like doing that, and then you get a yarn bowl at the end. It is ceramic though, and you have to be a little bit careful. You can see here, I did chip the bowl, and I was able to pick up the pieces and glue most of them back in, but it hasn't caused me any problems with that little chip there. But it is something to keep in mind, that because it's not plastic or wood or something like that, it is prone to chipping. But yeah, this thing's taken some beating. I carry it all around the house. It is a really nice big size too. You can put a absolutely massive ball of yarn in here and still use this bowl. So.
Somebody wants to know about Hobby Lobby's I Love This Yarn.
Um.
I don't know if we bought that.
So Hobby Lobby's I Love This Yarn is just like their staple competitor to Red Heart Super Saver. I think it feels a little bit nicer than Red Heart Super Saver. It's just a little bit softer. The best thing about the I Love This Yarn, one, it comes in just every color under the sun, but they have so many lines that I've never had a problem. I wanted to make an amigurumi of a video game character, and I needed bright yellow and bright green, and I wanted them all in sport weight because I wanted to make it relatively small. And there just isn't anywhere that you can just walk in the store and buy 15 different colors of sport weight yarn, or 15 colors of worsted weight yarn, or, you know, a dozen different colors of cotton yarn. They have I Love This Yarn, they have I Love This Cotton, they have I Love This Yarn Sport Weight, they have I Love This Baby Yarn. I don't know. They've got like a million different lines. But you can literally walk in and buy any color in any shade. It's relatively reasonably priced. And it seems to me like a pretty good workhorse yarn. My biggest issue seems to be the same issue that I have with Chick-fil-A. It always seems to be Sunday when I want to go to Hobby Lobby, just like it always seems to be Sunday when I have a craving for Chick-fil-A. So it just turns out that I don't shop at Hobby Lobby as much as I shop at Joann Fabric. And for better or worse, that's just how it works out. Where I live, they're not even that far apart, and it's not like I couldn't make it into my routine. I just don't. And that's nothing against Hobby Lobby. I just don't make it in there. So I think I Love This Yarn is a good yarn, and I've heard very good things about it. I don't use it all that often. Like I said, I've used the sport weight version to attempt to make an amigurumi of Lucio from a video game, because I needed a whole bunch of bright colors, and getting those in sport weight was really very difficult, except when I walked into Hobby Lobby, who had everything in every color that I could possibly want. So Terry said she bought the yarn bowl. So I would love to see if you end up painting it and liking it, or even if you don't end up liking it. I'd love to see what you make with it. Feel free to share pictures on Facebook with me, or direct message me on Instagram. Tag me in an Instagram post, whatever. I'd love to see it. You guys are buying bowls. It makes me wish that we had affiliate links and I was getting a little kickback, but no No worries there. I'm glad that you guys are getting the yarn bowls because I think they're pretty cool. So, yeah, Terry's mentioning Hobby Lobby's pricey. Hobby Lobby can be their biggest problem is that they don't have multiple coupons, so you kind of have to wait for their sales. And like I said, I tend to crochet on a tight deadline where I should have started, a month ago on a blanket, and now it's 3 days before I need it, and I just need to turn it out really quick. And it almost always seems like that's never when the yarn is 30% off. So yeah, I guess their sales sort of run on cycles, and if you catch them on a 30% off sale, great. But yeah, I've found very good deals on Hobby Lobby. If you catch deals when they're clearancing stuff out, they clearance things like crazy cheap. I have a whole bunch of crochet thread that I think I picked up for like 89 cents. And not really because I needed all that much crochet thread, but it's pretty hard to pass up a $4 or $5 ball for 89 cents. So, somewhere behind me, there's a whole bin of Hobby Lobby clearance crochet thread. People are discussing their paint choices, oranges and purples. I don't know where you guys shop in particular for acrylic paints, but Michaels has absolutely the best selection around me. They have a whole aisle, and they had just tons of different lines, and I think that's one of the things that ended up making this bowl look really cool, is that I mixed matte and gloss and metallic, and it really gave it some different depth. Even if you mixed all different shades, I think the different sheens on here really helped give it some depth. So take that for what you want there. But it might be worth looking at some of the different options in the different finishes on the paints if you're going to mix them together in a similar fashion. If you're just going to do stripes or flowers or something like that, then a different technique might be better for you. Somebody's mentioning that they never hit the Hobby Lobby clearance. Hobby Lobby has some of the best clearance. I think Michaels has the worst clearance, in my opinion. Joann Fabric just never seems to have clearance. I don't know if that's just my store or they have like one aisle and it's random household stuff, but I never seem to catch yarn on clearance at Joann, like, ever. Michael's clearance just never seems to be any good. They'll have some yarn in there occasionally, but it'll be marked down less than it would have been if I had gotten it on sale. They'll take like 40 cents off and call that clearance, and then coupons don't work on it. So that always just bugs me. Hobby Lobby, though, has just the best clearance sections. One of the things I found, though, is you have to like wander the whole store, because sometimes they'll have a clearance section in the back corner, sometimes they'll have it at like an end cap, sometimes it'll be at the end of the yarn aisles where the yarn is, and then like you'll find ribbon like 3 aisles later. So you really have to spend some time hunting around. But and then some of the time they just leave all of the clearance yarn in the aisle where it was sitting and just sticker it. So you've got to hunt around a little bit for Hobby Lobby clearance, but when you find it, it's really usually very good clearance prices. I get clearance yarn from there, but I usually go for the accessories and hooks and things like that. I have a ton of shawl pins, so I showed you before I love wearing different shawls, but I'll wear a pin with them. Hobby Lobby has, of the 3 stores, Joann, Michaels, and Hobby Lobby, they're the only ones that I think carry shawl pins at all. Joann might have like 1 in the yarn aisle, but I don't think they even generally carry them. But they'll have pins. I might have some sitting over here. Sometimes I'll just buy like brooches to wear as shawl pins, just to hold my shawl on. This one was $5.99, and I got it for $1.49, and that's pretty hard to beat. And it's just a little rainbow butterfly that I can throw on. I'm just looking around to see if I have any more Hobby Lobby clearance on hand, but yeah, I'd say if you don't generally frequent Hobby Lobby because it's a little pricey, definitely go when they're clearancing stuff out, because what my husband was asking is, how do you know when Hobby Lobby is clearancing stuff out? Usually close to a season change, they'll have a big changeover because they'll get rid of all, and I guess I shouldn't say close to a season change, close to when stores start changing for the season. So I know that's kind of a hard thing to guess, but we're about halfway through summer. I would expect that they're probably getting ready to put the fall stuff out and get rid of the clearance, or get rid of the summer stuff. Okay, he's saying that they already had some of the Thanksgiving and Halloween stuff. Well, they might even be getting ready to put Christmas out in like 2 weeks. But they still had a whole bunch of summer stuff out. That stuff will all go to clearance. And stores sort of change over on cycles. So you kind of just have to, it's not a really easy thing to notice. One of the best ways, honestly, is if you use Reddit. And you follow the crochet subreddit, the knitting subreddit, any of the yarn subreddits, you'll see all of a sudden there'll be like a swoop of pictures of people saying, I got all of this on, for $100 from Hobby Lobby, and it'll be like a boatload of stuff. Then you usually know that Hobby Lobby has clearance going on. And unfortunately, then you're a little bit late to the party, and so I don't know how you know other than just being a regular shopper there, but that's generally a pretty good indicator that they've started clearancing stuff out. They also don't seem to be very shy about marking stuff down a second round. I've gotten stuff that's been marked down twice, and is down, like 75% off, basically. So some people heading out for the night. Couple people talking about paint colors again. Yeah, so just, I don't know, maybe if you just ask them, they might know when they do the next round of clearance. I've never just asked somebody who worked there and just found out when they mark things down. They might just tell you. They might not, but sometimes they don't let employees know when they're going to mark things down just for that reason, so that people aren't waiting for the sale. They'll just show up that day at work and they'll say, all right, clearance all this stuff out. So they may legitimately not know. But somebody's asking about a favorite baby blanket pattern or stitch. I have 2 recent baby blankets out. One of the things that they're, this is Shalene asking, and she's asking because, oh wait, no, sorry, I'm off a line here. It's Wendy asking what my favorite stitches are, because she's concerned about fingers getting tangled. I have 2 videos out. Both are recent videos. One is an interlocking shell stitch, and the other is the granny spike stitch. Both are incredibly dense stitches with basically no holes. They make beautiful fabrics, and I think look a bit more like knit blankets because they lack all of the holes. They don't look like they're made of knit stitches, but the overall effect is that when you knit up a blanket, generally they're a bit more solid than crochet blankets. But Additionally, as long as you use a relatively small yarn, a number 3 or a number 4 weight yarn, your holes are going to be very small. And babies kind of like to grab onto things. Anybody who's held a baby who holds onto their hair and you have to try and peel them out of your hair will know that they like to get their fingers in and latch on. And so I actually don't mind small holes in a baby blanket just because they like to do that. Big holes that they can get a whole arm in, those are kind of a no-go for me. So as far as patterns that I have out right now, I would recommend the Granny Stitch or Granny Spike Stitch or the interlocking shells. As far as patterns that I personally use for baby blankets, I've recommended in the past there's a diamond stitch blanket, which works up so that when you're working, you work rows of double crochet and then you'll work skip. So you'll basically chain 2 and then skip over 2 stitches and you work diamond shapes. Is that the free one? Yeah, that looks like it. He's going to put a link to the one that I'm talking about, but it works up in like crisscrossing diamond shapes. And I think that, like I said, my baby blankets tend to be solid white. And it just looks really pretty as a finished product in a solid white blanket. You can work a border such that you can wiggle a ribbon through the end, and that's not intended to leave in there with the baby. You don't want to leave the ribbon for that, but it looks beautiful when you give it as a gift. I also generally crochet a shamrock and stitch it onto one corner. With the same intent that it can be cut off if they want to not leave it on there with the baby. But my mom's family's all Irish, and so they appreciate the white blanket with the green shamrock on there. So, let's see, where am I at? Shalene made it to the live stream, which is good. She has a bad luck sometimes and just misses them. So I'm glad that she made it tonight. Couple people leaving just to head to bed. It is starting to get late, at least where I'm at. Somebody's asking about the border on the interlocking shell stitch blanket. I chose a border. I worked up a little bit of a sample, but I have not got the video out yet. I think I'm going to do, I've decided on the double arch, which is a really interesting pattern because you crochet all of your first row of arches all the way around, which are just chains and single crochets. But on the next round, you actually have to pass the crochet hook and take it out and put it back in the loops. And so it's not any more difficult, but it's a little bit tricky. And so I'm kind of excited to show off that technique in video. So I just have not gotten that worked up. When I started off the stream, I was explaining that we have black raspberries that grow in our backyard, and those ripened this week. And so when that happens, we really only have a couple of days to get them picked before they shrivel up or the birds eat them. And so when I pick all of those, I usually clean them and turn them into jam. And because I am crazy, I guess, I went to the store and also picked up, they just had a ton of fruit on sale for 4th of July. And they had cherries on sale and blueberries and all sorts of things. So I spent the last week just jarring up jam and making freezer jam. So I have not gotten a whole lot of video progress done. But now that jam season is out of the way, I definitely will be getting back to recording some videos. At least jam season for me. I know typically that's more of a fall activity, but that's when the black raspberries come in. So, yeah. Yeah. So if anyone has additional questions, comments, things that you want to talk about crochet related or yarn related, go ahead and throw those in the live chat. Again, if you're watching this later, you can throw them in the comment section below, and I will get to those off stream. The other thing that we talked about a little bit earlier, and I'm going to revisit just in case some of you weren't here, if you're not getting notifications about live streams or about videos that I post, make sure that 1, you're subscribed to the channel, and then 2, if you are subscribed but you're still not getting notifications, there is a little bell next to the subscription button when you hit subscribe. You can choose to turn on notifications by hitting the bell. And then if you click, there's like a little drop down and you can choose to get all notifications. And that means every time I post a video, every time I am going live, you'll get an email. And if you use a YouTube app on your phone, you'll get like a push notification type of thing, as long as you're logged into those apps. So if you like the channel and you want to see more content, those are the ways to make sure that you're getting all of the notifications that you should be getting. And then, as per usual, if you like a video or you found content useful, please hit like or comment on the videos. All of those things help the YouTube algorithms to show the videos to other people, and really help the channel out. So, if while we're live streaming, you're enjoying the content, you can hit like on that. If you watch one of the videos that I've published, if you hit like on those, that helps the channel out quite a bit. Somebody likes your bouncing bell. He sits not very far from me and does all of the stream handling. So he'll put up the notification to follow me on Facebook or Instagram at Experiments in Crafting, or things like the little bell. He also does all of the links. So if I'm not talking to the camera, I may be talking to him, where he'll be asking for clarification or having me check a link over on the monitor to make sure that it's the right one to post to you guys. Can you use yarn for hot pad, bamboo yarn for hot pads and pot holders? So bamboo is not the same as cotton in that they don't usually take bamboo and pull the fibers out and turn it into yarn. They break it down into usually rayon. And I think rayon should have a sufficiently high melting point that I think you should be able to use it for pot holders or for towels. It should be a totally natural fiber. It's also made of cellulose like cotton. Some of you have probably heard me talk about my day job involves yarn for textiles. I do research for a startup company, and so if I'm remembering correctly, rayon from bamboo should have a high enough melting point that you should be totally fine using it for pot holders and dishcloth. Do you have a melting point on rayon?
No, but wouldn't you also need to worry about the specific heat as far as transferring the heat out for a pot holder?
So he's mentioning whether it would transfer heat so that it wouldn't really protect you. So if it gets too hot too quickly, it's not going to be a decent pot holder. And that I don't know offhand how well rayon transfers heat.
150 C melting point for viscose rayon.
150. So he's saying the melting point for cellulose-based rayon is 150 C, which is 300-ish degrees Fahrenheit, somewhere in that ballpark. 302. So maybe you don't want to use rayon, now that I say that, for pot holders. For hot pads on the table might be okay, but I don't know. I'd maybe stick with cotton, though you're better. Yeah, wool would be a really good option. Something that's 100% wool would be a really good option. Cotton is a good option. Though cotton starts to degrade if you get it too hot for too long. The things that you want to really steer away from there are plastic. So you don't want to use polyester, you don't want to use nylon, you don't want to use acrylic necessarily, because what happens, they'll be okay melting point wise, but a lot of times what you'll do is something called killing them, where the fibers will sort of like fuse to each other and they'll get sort of crunchy and like rigid over time. If you keep them hot over and over again like that. So I guess I would stay with cotton personally. Somebody was mentioning that I'm not a yarn snob. I talk about a range of yarn. I appreciate that. I try and cover all different types of yarns. I have to strike a balance because I do really, really like very nice, expensive yarns, but I also am perfectly happy to see some really cool yarns that are less expensive. And I'm pretty happy to use either. I'm a firm believer that there are right yarns for different projects. So when I make a fingering weight shawl that I'm going to wear personally, it's going to be hand dyed. It's probably going to be wool, and it's probably going to be indie dyed at that. If I'm making a gift for somebody who I think will take care of a finished object or a finished item, I'll use good yarn for that. If I'm making something for a kid, it's going to be big box brand all the way, because kids just are hard on things. They beat things up, and acrylic just holds up better than most other things, and it's way cheaper. So if it does get ruined, it gets ruined, and it's not that big of a loss. But yeah, some of these honestly are very nice yarns, and there's not really any good reason to be snobbish about them. In particular, the ZZ Twist and then this Beautiful You are really, really beautiful yarns, and they show beautiful stitches. And so I don't know. I don't know that there is anything better to compare this to. Yeah, it would be nice if it was natural fibers instead of acrylic, but it's not, and that's probably okay for right now. So, yeah, I guess.
Somebody asked if wool would felt for the potholders.
So somebody's asking if wool would felt. So felting is a process that happens so on the outside of wool, on each of the little fibers, there are what looks like scales, and they look just like lizard or snake skin or dragon scales on the shaft of each fiber. Yeah. And so what happens is when you get them wet or heat them up, or work with wool a whole bunch, it will sort of like entangle itself, and those scales will lock against each other. There is a process that a lot of people will run wool through called superwashing, and that will remove those scales, and that will generally not felt anymore. So if you're going to use wool for a potholder or a hot pad or something, it might be fine if it felts. Felting isn't really a problem. Like it's a problem if you make a really nice drapey sweater and then it felts on you and gets kind of gummed up and won't lay right and you can't bend your elbows anymore because your sleeves are felted. But if we're talking about a pot holder or a hot pad that you're just going to keep setting stuff on, it's probably fine if it's felted. If it's a problem for you, you can use superwash wool. Something like a Cascade 220 comes as a superwash wool. I think you have to get Cascade 220 superwash because I think it comes in non-superwash wool. It's a little bit more expensive than a ball of something like Red Heart Super Saver or some of the cheaper just base acrylics. But really, some of these Lion brand yarns, these are $5, $6, $7 a piece. I don't remember what this one was specifically, but you can get Cascade 220 in the same ballpark, and it's 100% wool, and you can get it superwash. It comes in a multitude of colors, so if you really wanted to get something that was 100% wool, there are cheaper options. One of the options that we don't usually talk about here too much are local yarn stores, and that's just a little bit my fault. So a lot of times I'll talk about indie dyed yarns and I'll talk about big box stores. There is an in-between there, which is local yarn store brands. So Cascade and I'm blanking on some of the other brands. Encore. There's a handful of other brands that you can get at small stores that, who else? Haiku is a local yarn store brand. There's a number of brands that are slightly more expensive than Michaels or Joann Fabric, but substantially less expensive than an indie dyed yarn. There's definitely an in-between. So there's yarn in the $10 and less category, and then there's the yarns in the $25 and more category. But there is yarn in the $10 to $25 range, and really it's like the $7 to $25 range is usually where local yarn stores seem to start. Though I've gotten small balls, 50-gram balls for $2 or $3 at local yarn stores. So I guess I shouldn't say that's a hard, but that range of yarn does exist. They're a little bit higher quality. They're usually a little bit nicer feel to them. They usually hold up a little bit better. You can generally get more natural fibers there. One of the things my husband was mentioning is that there's a yarn company called Melbrigo. They make absolutely beautiful dyed yarns. They're not an indie brand, but they are hand-dyed yarns. Those are in the $14 to $18 range generally, and they make absolutely beautiful wools. Generally, I think they're all superwash. So, yeah, that's a long answer to a question. Yes, wool could felt with the repeated heat and handling, and usually it's the moisture from condensation where you get the water in there that causes the felting. But I don't think it's a problem, and if it is a problem for you, you can get superwash wool. Let's see. Kind of flipping through here. Somebody's mentioning that they're addicted to Unforgettable shawls. Love the drape. I do have a little bit of Unforgettable in a bin over here. I am not as big of a fan of Unforgettable. I used Unforgettable way too early in my crochet career, I guess. I bought a ball of it. It's absolutely beautiful stuff, but it is not beginner friendly, I would say. You can't really pull your stitches out. It's a single ply yarn that's like loosely twisted, and so it's very difficult to see your stitches. and I think it was maybe like my third project, and I made a corner-to-corner scarf. And it just, I was not super happy with the project. It was a new stitch for me, and so I struggled with it, and I had to pull it out, and it was kind of a mess. And so I've never really gone back to Unforgettable, but I do know a lot of people like it. It's very shiny and has bright, beautiful gradient colors. Unforgettable might have been one of the first people or first lines of yarn to really have pretty gradient striping yarns that I can remember, at least. But yeah.
2 hours and 5 minutes at this point.
Yeah. So I see that we're losing people here and there to going to bed, and really I probably ought to do the same. So I thank you guys all for all of your comments and all the interaction here tonight. If you have any additional questions, please leave them in the comment section below. Again, if you like the video, please hit like and subscribe. If you are subscribed, make sure that you've got the notifications turned on so that you get updates on future videos, and whenever I'm live, you'll get notifications. I'm always available on Facebook and Instagram at Experiments in Crafting. Feel free to send me direct messages or pictures of finished projects or questions or issues. I'm always willing to chat about those. And then we should be streaming again next week about the same time, 8 o'clock on Tuesday night. If I'm not able to stream on Tuesday night, we've been able to usually catch everybody on Wednesday night. And that is 8 o'clock Central Time. Yeah, if you're available next week, we'd love to have you back here about 8 o'clock Central Time next week. And with that, I'm going to say good night, and thank you for watching. And again, leave your comments in the comment section below if I can help you out with anything. Hopefully you got to see some new interesting yarns tonight. Have a good night. Bye.